Listen up or run for cover. Dropping knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it. The real Brad Lee is dropping bombs.
What it is, Brad Lee back again with another episode of Dropping Bombs. Today, folks, I've got a real treat for you. David Neagle, who is the founder of a multimillion-dollar global coaching company called Life Is Now. He's been featured on Forbes, CBS, NBC, Wall Street, everywhere and anywhere. He's a consultant to many, many big people, some of which you may never have heard of, but some of which you've definitely heard of, including the New York Times best-selling author Jen Sincero. Put your hands together and welcome Mr. David Neagle. Thanks, David.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm pleased to have you here because I want to pick your brain and get some free consulting. That's the benefit of a podcast.
Let's do it.
Now,
I may now be featured on Better Homes and Gardens that we're all home. So,
yeah. Well, you have your own podcast, right? Called Successful Mind Podcast.
Yeah, the Successful Mind Podcast. Sure do.
So you are used to the podcast situation. The only thing awkward for me is I'm home. So you might hear a dog bark or the doorbell ring, but other than that, we're just going to keep rolling.
Yeah, same on my end, man. Sounds good to me.
Good. So now tell me a little bit that most people don't know about David Neagle.
Well, I got into this. It's interesting how I got into this industry of self-help and coaching and all that. I was a kid that dropped out of high school at 17, got married very early, had a couple of kids, and found out that I didn't know shit and could not support my family. My car was repossessed. We filed bankruptcy. We were living next door to a crack dealer. It was an interesting scenario, and basically the only thing I was qualified to do was to drive a forklift. So, well, that in a truck. So, if that's an upscale thing or not, I was working in a factory and driving a forklift, and I could not, as hard as I tried, Brad, I could not figure out how do I change my mistakes. So I even asked people, because you hear, if you don't know, ask for help. And I asked people, and they said, all they could tell me, Brad, was you shouldn't have quit school. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I know that. Now what do I do? And they couldn't tell me. So this is prior to the internet. So I figured the only thing I could do is go back to college. And I didn't have the time or the money to do that. And everything just kept getting worse in my life until one night I had a major meltdown in the back of a trailer. I was literally in tears. My wife would call me at work and tell me that she had to take the kids out of the house because the guy next door was beating the hell out of his wife, and she could hear the screaming, and she didn't want them to hear the screaming, so she would literally take them to the park. So I said to myself, all right, how do I get out of this? What do I do? And a voice in my head said, change your attitude. Now, that might not sound like much, but what was interesting was that I've been hearing that all my life. When I was a kid, I didn't do well in school. I didn't like school. It wasn't a challenge for me at all, and nobody knew what my problem was. So they would call my dad in. They would say, David's a pretty smart guy. If he would change his attitude, he'd get better grades. I'd go home and get smacked around, and then I would get sent to my room from one quarter to the next. And they would tell me to study, but nobody ever taught me how to study. So I had this pattern of not knowing what to do. So when I decided to change my attitude, a remarkable thing happened. My income tripled in a month. It literally tripled. I went from $20,000 a year to $62,000 a year. And that was the first sign of hope in my life to give me the impetus to go out and study and see what else I could learn to do. So I went to work for another company. It was a petroleum company. And for the next 7 years, I studied my ass off, and I climbed to the top of that petroleum company. And really what I was trying to do was figure out, how did I make the initial change to begin with? Like, I couldn't believe that an attitudinal change could make such a significant difference in my reality, but it did. I mean, it let us buy a house. It got us out of total debt. It changed the way that we were living back in the early 90s, totally. So I started studied for 7 years, did really well at the company I was working for. And then I started to put things together in my mind, like how to think successfully and behave successfully. And I started to teach that to people. Like I wasn't charging them or anything, just like friends and stuff. And some people were becoming really successful with what I taught them. So I said, you've got something here. And I started a company called Life Is Now at that point. And I've been teaching people all over the world since then how to think successfully, not just think, but how to apply that in your business and in your life to accomplish whatever dream you want.
So that's what I want to talk about a little bit first.
Okay.
Number one, how do you change your attitude? Because a lot of times people ask me, how are you so confident? And I've got my own ways, but looking back is kind of how I developed them, but it's hard for me to articulate the how. So it sounds like you've mastered that ability. How does one change their attitude?
Were you always confident though? Were you confident as a kid?
Uh,
Or is that something you stepped into over a period of time?
well, I think prior to this, I was arrogant rather than confident. I think my confidence developed over the last 10 years.
Okay.
Before that, I seemed confident, cocky, smart ass, arrogant, but I think I was a little more insecure than I let on.
Yeah. I think most of us were probably more insecure than we let on. So I think the idea is, like, it appears to me like you changed over a period of time, but was it a conscious choice in your life where you said, oh shit, I'm not really confident, I'm arrogant, I need to really have something of substance underneath this in order to change? Or was it just a decision one day you're like, I'm going to totally change who I am?
Normally I'm the one that asks the questions, Dave, but I'll humor you because this is good. This is good conversation. Myself, there came a point in time where I decided I'm going to start helping other people. And I hadn't heard Zig Ziglar's conversation then. This was like early, but later I got to hang out with Zig Ziglar, and he told me the best way to get what you want is to help others get what they want. And I didn't know what that meant, but that's when I really factored in, I need to change. And I changed by saying, enough about me. Let me start helping other people. And my ethics changed, my integrity changed, and I changed. So when people say people can't change, yes, people do change and they can change. But I didn't know that it was confidence that I needed to change or build up. I just started changing my beliefs and my habits and ultimately developed confidence. And now looking back, number one, I forgave myself because, again, a lot of times I believe people's subconscious mind allows them to make choices that will hurt or limit their abilities. Why? I think for years they've convinced themselves that they're not worth anything. So I consciously forgave myself. I committed to do what I say I'm going to do, ethics and integrity from here on out, no matter what. I don't care if it's good or bad. I'm going to do the right thing no matter what. I started to set goals every day, but not massive goals, just small goals that were easily attainable. And then I started eliminating the negativity because people would pop up and be like, oh, are you cool now? Oh, you're trying to be something special now. So I eliminated that. And then I started to visualize. And then I started to seek more knowledge, started reading books, listening to mentors. Never did that before. And then after a period of, 6 months or a year, I just started feeling different. Like I deserved more. I deserved more respect in relationships. I deserved better than I had. And I didn't know what made me feel that way. But looking back, it's because I started to realize I am a good person and I do deserve more than this. And I don't deserve, disrespect and this nonsense. So ultimately I changed over time internally on accident. Now looking back, that's what I did, but I didn't know I was doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But the reason that I asked the question was because part of it was a conscious process, which is what happened with me also. I was what you would call an unconscious competent when I made the first change, which then caused me to ask questions about how did this happen and where was I and how could I repeat this in my life? So I went through the same process that you did basically. And it was a consciousness all the way of of being like, well, I didn't know that this other world existed. I remember in 1993, I sold a boat to go to a Tony Robbins seminar. And I went there, and seriously, this is no exaggeration at all, I didn't know there were that many positive people on the planet. It was total culture shock for me. But there was part of me that wanted to run because I'm like, I don't belong here. This is not my crowd. This is not who I should be around. And part of me that was filled with inspiration, being like, you could be this also. And so it was a process over a period of time, like I said, about 7 years, where it was looking at what served me, what didn't serve me, and setting small goals, like you said that you set, and then achieving them, and then my confidence slowly rebuilt over a period of time. And the same thing in relationships, as you said. Like, I don't deserve to be disrespected. I'm a human being. I deserve to be treated with respect, but with the equal respect that I treat another person. And my income skyrocketed. I became a millionaire in a very short period of time, which was completely outside of the realm of possibility, the way that I grew up. And then I started teaching other people how to do the same thing.
And then boom, started making even more money.
Yeah, well, that's the part that people don't understand. The more you make, the easier it is.
Yeah, and the more people you help, the more you make.
You can't do it without helping people. Well, unless you're a thief, but
I always tell people, you want to make $1 million, solve 1 million problems. Just
exactly.
find problems that people have and solve them. And too many people are focused inward. Like, I want to get rich. I want to make money. I'll help people so I can make money. That's not truly, authentically looking to help people.
Yeah.
I changed somebody's life by teaching them how to close deals. And when I saw what happened and how they evolved, I thought, man, I want to help other people do this again. So I quit my job and started a training company, which led to where we are today. But I really wanted to help other people. Like, it wasn't about, I want to do this so I can get rich. I didn't even think about money. I thought, man, I know I can make money doing it,
Right.
but I want to help other people. Like, I want to help people change their life. I was excited about helping other people. I had no visions of, I want to make money. I'm doing this so I can get rich. It wasn't about that. So again, I think there's people right now probably listening to this going, well, I tried that and that shit doesn't work. Well, it's probably because your authenticity is not genuine.
Exactly. They're trying to overcome an insecurity inside themselves. Like, I'll ask people all the time, how much do you want to make? And they'll be like 1 million, 10 million. I want to be Grant Cardone, something like that. And it's like, do you really want to earn that money because you have a vision for yourself? Or is it something that you're overcompensating for? And now what they'll tell me is, I don't want to ever have to worry about money. And that's the biggest clue right there. Because when you make that kind of money, you have to manage it very wisely. It's not that you never have to worry about money again. You have to really put some serious conscious thought into what you're doing with your money at that point as a strategy for living. And I think that we give individuals it's interesting. Most people, when they grow up, they're exposed to success via the media, and they see the end result of success. They don't see what got the person to be successful. They don't see the discipline. They don't see the hard work. They don't see the education. They don't see the understanding and management of money. They don't see the vision and the future thought and what goes into, how do I get from here to there? And all they focus on is that end result. And they think that person's got it completely made, and they don't have to worry about a damn thing. And there's nothing that could be further from the truth.
You mentioned Grant Cardone. They probably wouldn't want to be him anymore. Have you seen his new haircut?
Yeah, I saw it. It was
Just
interesting.
joking. Oh my God. I'm about to text him like, dude, what are you doing? Did you cut your own hair? Is that like a COVID haircut? What happened?
Or Elena cut it like something.
No, dude. Elena could have done a better job. Like, it almost looked like it just didn't look right. I was going to text him, but I figured he probably knows already.
Yeah, I'm sure he does.
So who's the number one, let's call it testimonial that you have? Like, whose life did you change most drastically?
Well, I can tell you one that I changed, that changed me. So there was a guy that I worked with about 14 years ago, and I was not charging what I was worth at the time. And he,
Hey, before you finish, because if I don't interrupt, I'll forget.
okay.
I try to write down notes and then I never bring up good points. But what you just
Okay.
said, I want to make sure we dive into that a little bit.
Yeah.
You weren't charging what you're worth. Why?
Because I didn't believe that I could earn it. I didn't
Boom.
believe that I was enough.
Boom. Folks, pay
That's it.
attention to
That's
what he
all it
just
ever
said.
is.
Because I'm telling you, so many people have that problem. Dude, you see this magnificent cut?
Yeah.
And by the way, I love it only because I like the style. It's not a
Nice.
style. You don't have to like the style, but it's definitely not a COVID cut. I had someone come over. Now I said, how much when this guy was done? Guess what he said?
$20.
He
I
said,
don't know.
he said $35.
$35.
Dude, I was prepared to give him 200.
Yeah, I seriously hear it.
Like, dude, you can't get a haircut right now. Demand's up when someone will come to your house,
Right.
and
Yeah.
risk
Yeah.
getting COVID. Dude, that is a premium. He said $35. I pulled out 100, and by the way, I had 200 for him. I pulled out 100, and I was about ready to get the other 20s out, but two of them peeled off with the 100. And I just handed it to him, and he looks at it and he goes, "No way." And I said, "Why is that amazing?" And he said, "Dude, like most I've ever got was $50 hair, or what most I ever got was $50." And I said, "So what, dude? You got to raise your thinking." That's exactly what his problem is. He's running around risking his life, driving to people's homes. He's doing it all over town.
Yeah.
But dude, he's too afraid to ask what it's worth. It's worth at least $50.
Yeah,
At
totally.
least. But
Totally.
he doesn't think anyone will pay it.
I remember being in that place
to,
though.
What's that?
I said I remember being in that place.
So go back now. I just wanted the listeners to understand, guys. Half of you guys can double your paycheck right now by simply raising your frickin' price.
Yeah.
But you don't believe it's worth it, or in some cases, the market won't allow it, and you are dead ass wrong. And David's about to tell you, is that a cat or a bunny? Oh, that's a cat.
No, it's a dog.
Oh, that's a little dog?
The West Highland Terrier.
Oh,
He just
cute.
woke up from his nap.
Dude, I need readers now. I'm just like, what is that, a cat?
Yeah, seriously.
So go back. You weren't charging enough. Start back up.
Yeah. So anyway, I wasn't charging enough. I didn't even realize I wasn't charging enough. And I'm working with this guy who's a land developer. And I don't remember how he got in touch with me, but somebody said that I could help him. And I said, "Well, what's your problem?" And he said, "I've been stuck at this income level was like about 10 million, which was way above what I was earning at the time." He said, "For a long time, and I can't seem to break past it." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "Well, I have all this land that I'm selling to the Chinese, and they come in and they're very difficult to deal with." He said, "But if I could land the deal, it would be worth anywhere from $100 million to $200 million for me." So I started talking to him, and I said, "Well, what's the problem with the Chinese? Like, what is the actual issue that you're having?" He said, "Well, they do business very differently than everybody else does. Like, they get into the minute of the detail." And so I recognized he was having a problem in just communication with them. So I worked with him on that for a little bit, and I got him to raise to what he was worth, which was very interesting. But he landed a deal that was worth $200 million. And I made 15,000 out of that deal. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, he would have never made the 200 million hadn't I taught him what I taught him. So instantly my stock went up in my mind. So I raised my prices to over 6 figures after that. And that's what took me over $1 million really quick.
And started getting it.
Instantly getting it.
And by the way, nothing changed, folks.
Nothing
Zero
changed.
changed other than his opinion.
That's right. That's all it changed.
Dude, that is a good story. I'm going to use that story. I'm going to start using you in stories.
Anytime. It was really interesting though, because I really sat back and I was like, what the hell? This guy just made $200 million and I'm sitting here with 15,000. Something is wrong about this scenario. What is my problem? And I realized in that moment that I did not understand my own worth. So I changed it. And I was like, I'm not going after clients any longer that don't have the ability to earn the amount of money that I have the ability to, or that I'm worth receiving at that point. And that changed my whole business. That was about 3 years in.
Dude, that right there is the biggest bomb of all. If I were you guys, I'd pull the truck over, get out a pen and a piece of paper, and figure out what he just said and underline it. You got to know your own worth, folks. Wow, dude, that's a good story right there. So what was he doing? Like, how do you make $200 million on a land deal?
So the idea was that he was buying up huge plots of land, or actually he wasn't. I should take that back. He was helping the Chinese come over to the States and buying up huge plots of land that they would then build like malls and stuff on. So it wasn't just the deal for the land, it was the deal for the property that was also going to be built on it. He got a percentage of all of it. So you're talking major, like some of it were skyscrapers, like it was huge. And and his only, he could do it with Americans, but he could not, he had a block in his head around conversing with the ideology around how the Chinese talked to him. And when he got past that and he stopped judging what they would say to him in his mind, because Brad, what they would do is they'd come back and they were like, no, we need more information on this. And in his mind, he gave them all the information. So I started researching it, which he could have done himself, but he didn't think to do it. And I found out that they're very meticulous in how they do business, and especially at the high end. And they want more information than the average person would actually ask for in business. So I was explaining this to him, and then we got into the idea that he was seeing himself as not being good enough because they would always challenge him on whatever information that he brought back to them. And when he got past that, he didn't see his limitations, he saw his opportunities, and that changed everything.
And when you developed this ability to help other people learn these things, did you seek any, courses or mentorship or read any books that you would highly recommend someone do? Or did
Well,
you just learn it?
so I worked with Bob Proctor for almost 7 years. We actually owned a company together in the early 2000s. I studied for 7 years, met Bob in 1996. I think he became my mentor around 1997, 1998. And if it wasn't for him, I don't think I would be anywhere close to where I am. He taught me how to think. He was not a man that would tell you how to do anything really, but he would teach you how to he would teach you how to think in a way where you would come to the correct conclusion in your own mind. So the book that he turned me on to that I think made the biggest difference was Working with the Law by Raymond Hollywell. And there's another one called God Works Through Faith, but you have to get over your religious bias to read it if you have a religious bias. But it's probably the best book on faith that's ever been written.
God Works by Faith?
God Works Through Faith by Raymond Hollywell. And no,
I'm one that does not have a religious bias.
okay, so then you won't have a problem with it.
What
It's written in the
teach
Christian tradition.
What will it teach me, though?
It will teach you how to believe in a truth beyond your reality.
And who wrote that book?
Robert Russell.
I've been looking for a couple of new books to get. Sound like two good ones. And then Working with the Law?
Yeah, exactly.
What law?
The universal laws. So there's 7 basic universal laws that the construct of our religious beliefs was created out of, and they're also the laws of physics. So they're balanced in each direction.
Who writes that book?
That is Raymond Hollywell.
I thought you were going to say Science of Getting Rich by old Wallace D.
Yeah, I taught that for a long time. That book actually changed my life in an afternoon, a Saturday afternoon. It was around me for a couple of years, and somebody said that I should get it, and I thought it was a book on economics, and I'm like, I don't really want to study economics. I didn't know what it was. But then a couple of years later, I stumbled across it, and I got it, and it brought some form to the way that I was thinking about how the universe worked. And when I saw that written in form, it made me very emotional. So it's a great book. Like, I don't know if you believe in it or not, but it's a really great book.
I do believe in it. I do believe in it.
Good.
I'm wondering what's the better book, though. Like if you had to only get one of those books, which one would it be?
Science of Getting Rich.
Damn. I already know about that one. But these other two you highly recommend.
Yeah, I do. So I would get Working with the Law.
So Science of Getting Rich, for those listening wondering what it is, it pretty much inspired Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah, it also inspired Working with the Law, but it's a completely different attitude toward it that is in harmony with Waddles. So I think you'll really get off on it. It's great.
Well, Waddles with his, there's this certain stuff, this thinking stuff that everything's made out of, which I get basically, which means if you really break it down, it makes perfect sense to me.
Totally.
Like everything that you see, like look around, everything that you see was first made by this stuff, this thinking stuff.
Right. It's an intelligent substance in the universe. There's a modus operandi that he talks about in the book called more life. Everything is constantly moving toward more life. And if you can harmonize with that and you understand how it thinks in the stuff, then you can harmonize with that thinking and create the same thing in your life.
And I believe that.
Me too.
Obviously you do too.
Very much.
We're both successful.
Very much so.
See, so obviously success does leave clues. I don't know why more people don't be like, hey, David, what did you do? Oh, I just started thinking this way. Oh, okay, let me think that way. But the problem is a lot of people are like, how? Like, how do you think that way? I get up and I'm worried about freaking bills and you don't have to worry anymore, Dave. What do you say about that? Like, how do I get all positive and shit? Like, it's easy for you. How do I do it?
It's a decision, Brad. It's a decision. It's a decision that you're going to turn your life in a direction that gets results versus one where you're a victim for the rest of your life to the external conclusions of the people in the media or your parents or religion or whoever it is that's a person of influence in your life that doesn't have the results that you want for yourself. There's a sacrifice that comes with everything in your life. You have to be willing to give up what you believe to be true about God, the world, money, sex, religion, people, life itself, in order to embrace something that brings you results versus safety. Because safety does not exist. I've been telling people for years, like, listen, if we ever have something that happens in our life where it becomes very evident that safety is removed, you're going to be in for a rude awakening because you don't know how to transition out of the model that we've been inducted in all of our life. Well, guess what? We're in it with the COVID thing, right? Like the rules have changed. And if you're not going to just survive, but you're going to thrive through this, you have to be willing to think outside the box in order to make it work for you.
Too many people don't want to change.
No, they don't, because they value safety more than anything else. And it's an illusion. It's a total illusion. There is no such thing as safety. Everything's in a constant state of change.
Explain.
So if the individual that's listening to this right now asks themselves the question of what do they believe is safe, and then they ask themselves, where did they get that belief from? It'll most likely come from their parents. And there's a bias in that safety based on how they experienced life or how they were taught to be safe. How do you go through your life from birth to death without causing too much damage to yourself or your family or your children? And you have to ask yourself, what is it that you're hanging on to within that perspective that's so important to you that you're afraid to let go of? So I think that one of the biggest things that people are afraid to confront is the fact that they let other people influence their thinking. Like most people we're not born afraid to make mistakes. You've ever seen a child, Brad, that doesn't walk because the parents said, hey, you're never going to walk, give it up. Just forget it. It's not going to happen. You don't have any coordination. You're never going to walk. Well, why is that? Because we're not born with the idea of I can't in my mind. We just keep striving for the next thing that our desire pulls us towards. But at some point, we were taught that I can't. And that was when we had to conform to school, when we had to conform to religion, when we had to conform to the way that our parents believed about life. And then that became a rule at some point, wherever it was a rule with your parents, meaning that if you go beyond this line that I draw in the sand, you're going to be risking something. And most of the risk is what other people are going to think of us if we fail. But if we let that go, we actually realize that there is no failure other than stopping going forward to our dreams. Like if the only way that you fail is to give up. Everybody has a thinking mind that is resourceful. Our greatest gift is our ability to choose, and our ability to choose makes us resourceful. It makes us a resourceful part of nature that can think through a problem and look for a solution based on cause and effect. And if we can do that and not be emotional about it, we can get to the result that we desire, because the result that we desire is already here.
Man, filling up my notebook. David Neagle.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're taking all my material. Like, in other words, whenever I think to myself and just write down, because I always like to be retrospective, meaning my whole mission in life is to get the knowledge from the people who have it to the people who need it. And I'm one of them with it. And I always like to get my knowledge by looking backwards. Why? Well, because looking back, everything's 2020. Looking forward, I didn't know. Like when you said, well, how'd you get confident? I didn't know. But now looking back, here's what I did. So I like to look back, and it's like, sometimes I just sit there and reflect, and these are the things I'm writing down. Like, we were taught to be risk adverse.
Yep.
Be careful. Don't touch that. No. Be careful. No. So it's like, I think we were taught these things, and too many people are out there trying to figure out what to learn. And I always tell them, it's sometimes what you need to unlearn that'll break you through the ceiling.
100%. If you think about why were we so concerned with being safe, it's because if you look at our history, we were under some kind of ruling that forced us to think into a narrative based on whoever was ruling those individuals. And the consequence was heavy. It was a heavy burden to not think along with the king or the dictator or whoever was in charge, even the religion at the time. Whoever was in charge, if you didn't think according to the way that they wanted you to think, you were a heretic, you were an outcast, you were a rebel, whatever you were, and it paid a heavy price. So people taught that to their children, like, don't speak up, don't think differently, right? You could be burned at the stake, you could be beheaded, you could be whipped, whatever the consequence was. All those consequences came from how other people thought about how you thought and your behavior according to those thoughts. And it's still relevant today. Like, we crucify people in the media and social media and online when they make a mistake. A person will be magnificent in their achievements, and if they've made a mistake, we will rip them right down, in popular opinion. It's pretty horrific. And it's one thing if the person is convicted of that based in our democracy. It's another thing if they're just accused and they end up paying the penalty anyway.
Why do you think people find it hard to change?
Well, my belief around it is that everybody really wants to be loved and approved of. And we stick very close to the people that approve of who we're being versus following our own inner authority. So I've worked with people for 21 years now. And the biggest problem that I see with people who want to go from, say, where I was, which was middle class upbringing, to being very successful in their life, is that at some point they have to draw a distinction between where they're going and what their family thinks of them. And it's a very hard thing because these are people that you love, they're people that you care about. And when you start to make a change and they start to disagree with that change in ways that are painful to you, it's really hard to be like, hey, you know what? I love you and I'm still going in this direction. So I think that when a person is ready to accept themselves for who they are 100% and everybody else to their opinion, meaning it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, I think that they'll go in the direction that they want to. But until they change the authority in their mind, because if I have never been in a situation where my authority was turned over to me, in other words, if my mom still has authority in my mind, my dad still has authority in my mind, then I'll make decisions from what he thinks is right or what she thinks is right. And I think that's the problem that most people are in. Now, it transfers over to media, it transfers over to their boss, it transfers over to their bank, everybody but themselves. They have to accept it for themselves.
I feel like in order to change, people need to sacrifice, and that's what people are afraid of, the sacrifice. They're afraid to lose for some reason. Like I know people that are making minimum wage, living in a shithole. They always want to be more successful. They want a better relationship, better car, better whatever. They want better. And I say, well, why don't you quit your job and go try this? And they're like, no. Are you kidding me? What if I can't pay my rent?
Right.
Well, dude, you're afraid to lose the shithole apartment you're in. That's what you're afraid to lose. You're afraid to lose the shithole apartment that you don't want to try and go get one that you do want. Well, I mean, dude, it's better than nothing. See, they're afraid to lose. They're afraid to sacrifice, and you can't be afraid to sacrifice. You have to, there's a saying that I always say, if you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. So you're going to sacrifice anyway.
Yeah, totally. What you're saying is 100% truth. I remember I had this argument with an individual when I first started my business, and their perspective on what I was doing was coming from, what if you frick it up and you lose everything? And I thought about what they said for a moment, and I said, you know something? There's no way for me to reconcile this desire that I have in my heart to go out and try something. I am not okay with getting to the end of my life and finding out that I didn't try. I am okay with getting to the end of my life and finding out that I couldn't do it, that I didn't have the chops. Like if I find out that I can't do this, I will reconcile that and I will go do whatever it is that I think I can do. But I've got this calling inside of me that says, go do this thing. And I just can't live without trying to do it. Like, how can anybody live with that for the rest of their life, wondering what they could have been instead of giving 100% into trying to be that?
Well, because I think the same reason, they fear what might happen if it doesn't work rather than desire what might happen if it does.
Yeah.
Like
because all they've been taught is safety.
Well, I've been I forget what study it was, but I've been looking at this study that basically says if someone would rather not lose than gain. In other words, I forget what the study was. It was almost like, if you buy one, you'll get one free, did less conversion than if you don't buy one, you'll lose this opportunity or this sale, something to that effect. Right. In other words, they'd rather act because they don't want to lose something than they would act for a gain of something. Like, hey, I'll give you two pieces of candy for the price of one. Does not work as well as you cannot buy this candy if you don't buy it now.
That's 100% true. Like, people will fight harder for what they're going to lose than what they could gain.
Yeah. So do you know that study?
I don't know the study, but I remember somebody talking about that years ago, that they said that they had learned that. I think it was Robbins actually that talked about that.
Dude, I love old Tony Robbins, man.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. Like, he's done really incredible things with his life. He's a really good dude. But I agree, in my experience, I'll just tell you from my experience and working with people for 20 years, I completely agree with understanding that mindset is in most people, because they're attached to the idea that here's who you need to be, here's what you need to do in order to have safety be the top priority in your life. And that's where most people come from, is that they have to be safe. And there is no such thing as being safe. It's a ridiculous proposition.
And it really is. I mean, I understand, like, stay out of a bad neighborhood and you're more likely safer in a nice neighborhood. But then again, no, you're not. Look at Charles Manson. He went to the nice neighborhood. They weren't safe there.
So the idea is that it's not the neighborhood that keeps you safe. It's your awareness to choose what neighborhood you're going to be in, or if something goes wrong, what you're going to do next. It's in your resilience that you have any kind of safety, if there's anything at all.
How do you think your business has been impacted by this COVID-19?
Well, it's been impacted tremendously. Like, when when I saw major companies before the whole country started shutting down, I saw major companies adjusting to this, and that was a huge flag for me. Like, you don't see political decisions in or financial decisions in companies because of a political issue, not that much. So I started looking into what was going on, and I immediately shifted. So probably about 80% of my company is live. Like, we do a lot of live events, seminars. I speak all over the place constantly. We shifted everything to online. So how has it changed? Everything has been shifted to online, and our main focus is how can we help people not just get through this, but thrive through this situation. And that's what we're focusing on 100% right now.
And your podcast is one of the ways you're doing that, right?
It is, yeah.
So folks, if you guys like what Mr. Neagle is saying, make sure you go check out Successful Mind podcast. Plus you had an upcoming event that got canceled, Art of Success. What are you going to do about that?
So it's going to be on. So the actual event is pushed till October, providing that we're out of this situation by October. But what we're doing for the people that are have bought into that event is we're doing 3 days, 2.5 hours each day of teaching them the skills that they need to make it through this situation right now, so that they can thrive. They know what to do. They know how to think. They know how to get to the other side of it. And we're going to do that for 2 hours each day that the event was actually running. And we're doing a live stream.
If somebody wants to look into your coaching, where do they go? davidneagle.com?
Yeah, davidneagle.com. It's Nagel like bagel, not Neagle like beagle.
Oh, it's Nagel like bagel, but it's not. It looks like Neagle. Is this spelled wrong?
I know. Great-grandfather decided to change it when he came over from Ireland.
So it's pronounced Nagel. Looks
Yeah.
like Neagle, folks. Neagle, David Neagle, but it's David Nagel.
Correct.
You remember the Nagel? Remember Nagels, the artwork back in the 80s?
Yeah.
Dude, those were my favorite. Those are my favorite. That was my favorite artist, like a Nagel. If you got a Nagel, dude, you were cool.
You were it. You were it.
A real Nagel, not just the poster. all I got was the posters, but dude, those were the coolest.
Yeah, it was cool.
So what do you find would be your quarantine routine?
Well, mine basically has not changed all that much from my non-quarantine routine, other than I'm not going to our office, and neither is everybody's actually staying home. So, what I'm really into productivity. So my day is scheduled very strictly on my calendar, from the time that I get up to the time that I go to bed. There's no guesswork in what I do, but I've been doing that for probably 25 years now. So that is very automatic to me. What has changed is how I'm doing things. So exercise, like one of my biggest focuses now is my dog, believe it or not, because my assistant is not here as often taking care of the dog. But I meet with my CEO first thing in the morning. We discuss what's going to happen, and then we go about our day doing that. And then when we're done, we're done. Additives to that would be self-care, helping anybody in our company that needs help emotionally getting through what's going on. And I think that's about it, really.
You golf?
I do not. I fish.
What kind of fishing?
Basically any kind of fishing.
You like deep sea?
I do.
See, I'm a huge fan of fishing, but I hate deep sea fishing. It's almost like work.
Well, I agree with you there. It is. I don't do well out in the big seas, but like if it's not too bad, I enjoy it. But I was raised walleye fishing, bass fishing, northern pike, muskie. I was born and raised in Chicago. We used to go to Wisconsin for like every weekend when I was a kid.
Now, you said you dropped out of school about what, 17?
17, yeah.
And why'd you drop out of school? Didn't your parents stop you?
No, they didn't. My parents got divorced when I was 13. My dad was in Tucson. I was in Chicago. My mom went off the rails for 3 years, and I had a brother who was 4 years younger than me that I had to take care of. So it was a hell of a situation to be in with no parents. Like I'm very, very grateful I didn't make any very dangerous decisions because they were around me. I just didn't do them. But it was kind of on my own. And then when my mom snapped out of it, I was 17 already. So it was kind of like, nah, I'm going on my own here. I'm going to try it my way. And we had a big argument and I left.
Well, yeah, but not only were you 17, but you were kind of an experienced 17, which is a little bit different.
streetwise.
Yeah.
Streetwise.
Yeah, because I got booted out. We have similar backgrounds. I got booted out of my house at 16, almost 17, because I didn't mow the lawn when I was supposed to. My dad was a little bit of an alcoholic. He'd come home drunk all the time, sometimes happy, sometimes belligerent. Well, this time he came home belligerent and basically kicked my ass out. So at 16, I'm out of the house, no parental guidance. And I'm thinking, well, shit, why do I need to go to school? So I dropped out of school. Fortunately, though, I had already learned everything that high school had to teach.
Same.
I was literally testing out in college levels in 10th grade, 9th grade. I was like testing at freaking college levels. They were always saying, oh, dude, he could be a straight A student if he wanted to be. Oh, Brad's extremely intelligent if he'd just behave himself. You know, he's too hyper. They wanted to put me on Ritalin. Parents wouldn't let him, thank God. Now looking back, I hear that was a big issue, but like I was hyperactive, but it turns out I was bored.
I'm right with you. Like we were brothers, man. Same deal.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, when everybody else went to college, and I have nothing against college. Like when people say, Brad, do you think you need a college degree to be successful? Hell no. Do you want your children to go to college? Yes. What for? For the experience and the relationships, period. Right. Period. I think you can meet a lot of strong relationships. I believe relationships are the new economy. I think relationships are more important than anything in life and business. So I would want them to go to build long relationships and the experience of college and camaraderie and, fraternity and all that. But as far as a degree goes, dude, hell no. Like, unless you want to be a doctor that requires one, absolutely not. I think you can learn from people like David Neagle, like me, like people that have built businesses. Because I'm telling you right now, a lot of times you go to college, David, you're learning from a professor that's made 50 grand a year for their entire life teaching about people being an entrepreneur. Well, if they're so damn good at it, how come they're teaching college for 50 grand a year?
Exactly.
So they're not good at it. Guess what they are? They're learned. They read a book that was written by someone who read a book that was written by someone who read a book. It's like, dude, I'd rather learn from the entrepreneur that built the company. And nowadays we can do that.
We sure can. Yeah, we have, like, it's funny when people don't understand the power of the knowledge they have in front of them with the internet. It's amazing what is it like. They don't understand the value of what's in front of them.
Huge. You can pretty much get any answer you want on Google.
Yeah. It's like having a download of the universe right in front of you.
And people always ask me, what is the, things you would regret? If you could talk to yourself at 18, what would you tell yourself? I have two things, when in reality there's three, but I always say two: seek mentorship and knowledge faster. Like, I had to learn everything the hard way. I was an idiot. I didn't know that I could go to a Tony Robbins seminar. I didn't know that there were people out there that would actually tell me exactly how to do it. I didn't even look for anything. I just, I want to do something. I go do it. And I learned the hard way. And I would change that. And then I would also invest money more wisely. I spent a lot of money trying to impress people, and no one taught me about money. So I'd spend money differently. I wouldn't have been as cool. Like, all the people growing up would have remembered Brad Lee. He had the cool car and the cool this, and he was always the fun guy and, had the cool clothes. You may not have remembered me that way if I would do it over. You may not even remember me, but I'd have 20 times more money right now. I promise you that.
Yeah, you would. You sure would. I would have gotten the hell away from the people that I was surrounding myself with. I didn't realize that was my biggest problem, my environment at the time. Yeah, it was interesting because when I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than move to San Diego, and I didn't do it. I stayed in Chicago, and then I learned later on, like, oh, I need to get the hell away from these people that I'm surrounding myself with. That's the big part of this problem.
Well, we live and we learn, David.
Yeah, we do.
Now, folks, if you guys like what you're hearing, go to davidneagle.com, Neagle, or better yet, for free, absolute free, because I bet you don't charge for your podcast, do you?
Nope, not at all.
I'd subscribe to Successful Mind podcast if I were you. See if you like it even more, which I'm imagining by getting this little taste, you're going to. And then go to davidneagle.com or go there right now. Because again, the guy knows what he's talking about. How do I know? Because he's talking about the same exact things that I've learned the hard way. And it sounds like you've learned the hard way as well.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
But I think you got much smarter than me, much quicker, because you've been helping people, coaching people for 21 years.
Yeah, 21 years. I started in October of 99.
See, dude, I started Lightspeed 20 years ago, and it wasn't even successful for the first 5 to 10. And I didn't even start like having confidence and learning anything until the last 10. Like, I'm telling you, man, you've been winning twice as long, and that's a long time.
Doesn't matter how long. It's a matter that we got out. That's the difference.
Amen, isn't it?
You bet it.
Folks, and by the way, David, appreciate you guys or you coming through and giving us the time and spending an hour with us. I want to thank you for that.
And thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
My pleasure. And again, next time you're in Vegas and this is all over, stop by the studios and we can do it a little bit in a more formal setting. I'd love to have you back.
You bet. You bet. You got it.
Folks, you heard it. Go see him. Again, davidneagle.com. If you're interested, Success Mind podcast. And make sure you share this out, because if it's not for you, it might be for someone else. Go give me a rating so I crank up the ranks a little bit and help more folks. And as always, keep it real.